the problem in discourse, is what you're saying, is that
It's not necessarily a problem, but I
Okay.
think it's more like, what could we do to lift up having better conversations with people?
yeah,
And part of that is having meta conversations with other people, where you point, like if someone's going in a circle in a conversation, you point it out. Someone said something, you repeat, "This is what I believe that you said. What do you think?" Or that's not necessarily meta, but the meta would be like pointing that out. Hey, let me, for the better flow of conversation, let me see if I can repeat it back to you. So repeating it back is not necessarily meta, but pointing out that what you're going to do is meta, might be meta.
yeah. So meta conversation is an effective tool to use conversation well.
Sure.
And that might mitigate the problem that I was articulating in the beginning of missing each other in conversation.
Yeah.
So how does that exactly take form? Because like how would that rubber hitting the road, like how would that actually help people get on the same page? Like if their perspectives are genuinely like disjunct in a way where they can't understand each other, how would that tool help, aside from just trying to use words in a similar way?
Sure. Let me think.
Like rubber hitting the road sort of idea.
Yeah. I think with a lot of conversation, people are just missing each other because they're not having that meta conversation.
Okay.
Where, that saying, assumptions make an ass of me and you.
Okay. So
But-
basically addressing the assumptions that are underneath other people's sort of
How we
conversations.
interact.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just what, like assumptions of what they're saying, but just like assumptions of interaction.
Okay. So if I were to practice the skill of meta conversation in this sort of one-sided conversation, would I say something like, I believe your presupposition behind what you're saying is that everyone has presuppositions that need to be addressed before people can understand each other.
No, because not everyone thinks. It's hard. People, yeah. I don't think people even think that way. That's the problem, is people don't even thinking about the conversation. They just have, oh, this guy's creepy, or oh, this guy's giving this vibe or that vibe. It's not like, oh, this guy is going in circles. This is what I can do to do the, like.
Okay, so to pull out of my sort of trying to exemplify what you're saying. So you would be saying that social primacy, like this idea of very emotional judgments based on appearance, based on impression, sort of contaminates what could otherwise be a very fruitful conversation. Something like that?
No, I'm saying that people just don't think this way, and their natural disposition
Is those social things.
is those social things. Yeah.
Okay, so their natural disposition is that. It's not in a sense of contaminating. It's hard for them to look beyond that.
Yeah,
in a sense.
for sure. That's it.
Okay. So if the rubber's hitting the road, would the conversation between two theoretical people, look like addressing the personhood of the other, like addressing the perspective that person has, and like starting from there? Like, is that what the meta conversation looks like? I'm just trying to flesh it out.
You're gonna have to repeat that question.
So, is the initial meta conversation,
Yeah.
like addressing the personhood of the other.
Oh, I see.
Is that what it is?
See, that's where people would take offense, is when you're like, I notice this character trait of you, and then like this is how I see it playing out in this conversation.
Okay, but that seems like a sort of
Yeah.
psychoanalysis, like on the fly.
Okay. So that's another thought I had. What if
Okay.
people were just okay with psychoanalysis?
Yeah.
Yeah. If people were just open and genuine and didn't take offense. Like, oh, you have this assumption about me? Why should I take offense of you having this assumption? Hey, you talk to me, and then like we can talk about that assumption.
Like they could disagree with the assumption, maybe,
It's
of the psychoanalysis, or what?
No, it's like everyone has assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And like, why not bring them out in the open so we can address them?
Okay.
And why take offense about
Okay.
those assumptions in the first place?
Yeah.
Because everyone has them. Everyone's biased. Why not just address them? And if you don't address them, people are just gonna hold that in.
And then it's gonna work their conversation with strings.
I have like, what's that called? The saying is like, it's better to. What's that mindset where it's better to not know, or I forget what it's called. I always rather know than not know.
Okay.
Like
over communication is never wrong. That sort of idea.
that's not. No, I believe in I'm a firm believer of boundaries.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But I believe there's a way. If you hate me, bring it into the conversation. I'd love to address that, because I'm the type of person that I like conflict resolution. I don't like conflict necessarily in itself, but I like conflict resolution. That might be a problem where all of society can't like conflict resolution.
Yeah.
But I think there still might be a way to like bring out assumptions and address them and be fine with that.
So this is what I'm trying to pull away here. So are you ultimately saying that at the root of disjunction in discourse isn't like a propositional disagreement, but it has more to do with like these unsaid impressions or unsaid emotions?
I think it's part of the problem.
Okay.
Another part might be like, what's that called? Aristotelian arguments versus, I forget what the other side was. It's like, fudge.
Platonic?
No, it's like disagreeing and like I'm right, you're wrong versus like the psychological approach, the therapeutic approach, where it's like, trying to see the other person's point of view, repeating it back to them. The non-confrontational, I'm right, you're wrong. I forget what it's called.
Well, I know what you're referring to, if that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think too many people don't have the therapeutic approach to conversation.
Yeah.
I think that people don't have a meta conversation when they're having conversations. And would there be another? And people don't know how to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So how could we ask questions better?
I think that's just fundamentally probably changes people's mind. There has to be like a fundamental change to people's mindset, I think.
Okay, what does that change look like?
Man. I don't know, like you have the common saying, or not a common saying, but on the internet, I see constantly is like asking question as so many kids, their parents kind of took that asking question out of them.
Okay, like they took the question out of it, as to say that everything has an answer, it's not worth asking about. Or
No, like stop asking about that. Like
or
as
just stop
parents.
if you're
Yeah.
annoying. Yeah,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Okay.
But I don't know. I don't even begin to know how you get someone to start asking more questions, because this comes more to like a broader discussion of critical thinking, maybe.
So it's less of like how the person asks questions and more of like reigniting that sense of curiosity.
Yeah. Not necessarily, because you could have someone who ignites that curiosity again, but is just fundamentally bad at asking questions.
Okay, then let's say we have that ignition of curiosity, if that's a word. How do we ask questions?
I think it's just you just question everything, or question many things, and then you get a muscle built where you know which question will start leading to interesting discussions.
Okay, is that sort of like the whole Descartes idea of raising to the ground the previous presuppositions in order to question everything anew? Is that the
I'm
same
not
kind of
familiar.
idea?
No.
Okay, well that's the Cartesian idea when he was doing his project in which his skeptical project, in which he was questioning everything he thought he knew to try to rebuild the metaphysic from the ground up. Is that a similar idea as what you're saying?
I'm not picking up what you're putting down.
So I'm relating to what you're saying with with the story of Descartes and his skeptical project. Do you know Descartes?
I know the name.
So he was a philosopher in like the 17th century, and it could have been 18th. I don't remember, but or 16th for that matter. But he had this project where he, like I said, decided to try to destroy all of his presuppositions and question everything from the ground up. So basically, do my perceptions even tell me veridical truth, or do I even exist, or that sort of thing. And so question he decided to question literally everything and build from there.
That's me, but that's not everyone. I wouldn't expect that out of everyone.
Okay.
Everyone's fundamentally different, and just because I question everything doesn't mean everyone has to. And I think you could still be a good question asker even without questioning everything.
Okay. So what if you don't want to question everything, you want to be sort of like a moderate skeptic? What should you question? What's the minimum kind of threshold of what you should question? You don't want to question everything, but what's the minimum?
Everyone has their own set of interests.
Okay.
And so I would assume that it's easy for anyone to ask questions about the things that they're interested in.
Sort of like why questions? Like, why am I interested in this? Or is that too personalized? It's too much about your personal.
More like, I know how to navigate the topic.
Okay.
And how to ask the right questions because I'm in the same, I like the same things. Or it's like, you like Pokemon, I like Pokemon, and then I know, this question might lead to multiple branches of interest.
Okay.
Whatever, I don't know.
There's a common ground,
Sure.
and the entertaining skeptic who's trying to find this minimum that I put forward is going to say, okay, well, let's look at this common ground and then just look right under that to try to see what's holding that up. Am I missing you completely? I was trying to, because my question was like, okay, what's the minimum that somebody should be skeptical about if they don't want to just doubt everything?
Yeah. Okay.
So Is that what you were saying? Like the whole common ground and looking underneath
Well,
it?
it was one part, and I was getting to somewhere else where that's usually how it is.
Yeah.
And someone who's good at asking questions kind of is familiar with things outside of their own interest.
Okay. Because of their just innate curiosity. Or not innate, but because
Well, it could stem from more than one place, where
Yeah.
it could be, innate curiosity, or it could just be you really, really love talking to people,
yeah.
and you've gotten all that sense from just talking to people, not necessarily from your own curiosity, just because you love talking to other people.
So part of like one necessary ingredient of this is somebody that has like a well-developed understanding of what different people believe. Like that's one of the ingredients of this.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I heard you saying. Is that a right interpretation of what you said?
I think I got it.
Okay.
It's someone who doesn't need to question everything, but who just has a self-awareness of, of what a good question is, and you look at someone, or you look at your target audience, and you're like, you start thinking up multiple questions, narrowing it down to a good one,
Yeah.
and then that's how you base it off of.
So is a question always trying to get someone you're talking to like see the terrain and get from one place of thought to another? In that case?
Yeah, I think you can navigate the conversation just by questions alone. Not necessarily that you would, but you're able to navigate conversations where you want them to just by questions.
So now it's starting to sound more like a Machiavellian tool. In the sense of I want power over the conversation.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because what happens to anyone who just has a really great self-awareness of their public speaking skills? Are they all Machiavellian just because they have an innate ability to have self-awareness and use that to really get the most out of conversations?
Okay, so that opens up the intention, instead of just sheer trying to get power over the conversation, is trying to make the conversation most effective, which seems to be a virtuous intention.
Sure.
So they're trying to make the conversation most effective. But then another question, I guess, would arise out of that, would say, okay, what do they mean by the conversation being most effective? Do they mean that an effective conversation is when the other person is closer to their ideology than before? Or is it just like these things have been opened up and people are more likely to believe in the truth and less likely to believe in what's false? Something like that.
For me, conversations is I ask questions that I'm interested in, and people respond, and I am comfortable going where other people just don't have knowledge.
Okay.
So like when I feel like I think of other people, it's like, they're only able to talk about them and everything that they know, and they talk to other people, and it only encompasses what they know. And normal conversations might be, well, only when what I know and you know overlap that we can have a conversation, or I just tell you my side. You might not necessarily know, but I tell you my side. That's it. And then another conversation, you might tell what you're interested in your side, and that's it. But I think a good conversation could be like, well, I don't know, you don't know. Hey, let's find out. Or I know this part.
Okay.
I'm not going to influence you, but I just want to know what form an opinion.
So I like this. I like this. So there's I have heard this before. There's this superficial understanding about conversation. I think it's somewhat postmodern. I'm not sure, but it's something like, well, we just have to understand each other. That's the whole point. We're just understanding the other person's perspective. But you're saying conversation should be instead more exploratory. Like you're actually working
Should
together.
be. I mean, part for me of the fun of the one asset of the conversation is this, and it's like which I don't see a ton, but
Yeah.
no, not every conversation has to be like that.
Okay, not
Yeah.
everyone. But is that the kind of ideal conversation? Is something or
There's
or
no
are you-
ideal
or
conversation.
Are you presupposing that you will typically have more knowledge than the other?
Man, not necessarily, but I have so many critical thinking tools up my belt, and so
Yeah.
many. I know my way around a conversation, and I combine that with like I psychoanalyze everyone, that I can navigate like most conversations.
Okay, so in your navigational sort of skill, do you presuppose the validity of your psychoanalyzations? Like,
What's that?
or do you presuppose the validity of your psychoanalyzations?
No, this comes with like the assumption thing I was telling you, right?
Okay.
Everyone has assumptions.
Yeah.
Bring them to light, and we can discuss it.
So you're willing to update your psychoanalyzation if the person disagrees with you, if they have maybe a good reason or something like this.
Good reason. Sure, but people are also not really good at. People don't like, for the most part, thinking about themselves just in general, and like, oh, how does my emotion relate to the way I think, and how the way I act, and what's my personal philosophy, and how does that play out with my emotions and the way I act out in the world and everything.
Okay. So this actually, go ahead.
And so, like, yeah, I'm willing to hear other people out and like update my my assumptions and everything, but like, still gonna have my bias because
Yeah.
to an extent, and then other people might get offended because they don't like being psychoanalyzed.
Okay. Yeah.
Normally, I don't psychoanalyze. I don't like point flaws out.
Like bluntly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the normal thing.
Only if it seems to be an obstacle in conversation, you might point it out.
If we're really having a deep conversation that
Yeah.
we're both really invested, at that point, like, if you're invested in a conversation, I've got you. And then, like, if I point something out, you're just not going to walk away. I have enough time to point that out and us to work that out so that we're both fine, even if there's a little divide.
Okay. So conversations are more efficient when we have a correct understanding of each other's attitudinal nature, or they're just the kind of the flaws and let's say skills that would come with each psyche. Like conversations flow better when each of us have a better understanding of, okay, like what, like where is the
I mean, you probably could list 100 things where it's like, what would make a conversation better? Oh, knowing their culture, knowing how they're. This is one I think a lot about. It's how their neural network works.
yeah,
Like I think in terms of people's thoughts and how they think in regards to connections and neural networks. So, you know, culture, neural networks, psychoanalyzing, what's that called? Fudge. It's like, what are those called? when I bring forth an argument, but then the priest, like, nature is, all things made from nature are good, but that's not right. What are those called?
That's a fallacy.
Fallacies. Knowing fallacies makes conversation better. Knowing,
Yeah.
and you could probably get a giant list.
Yeah.
Oh, knowing the flow of conversation while having the conversation, like keeping that in mind while you're having the conversation. Having kind of shortcuts where you might be saying something, and then I know the type of argument that you're gonna have, and
Yeah.
then that only really works out though if like you're on the same page.
Okay, so like imagine this. Imagine you're having a really deep conversation with someone.
Sure.
And they're putting forward this point that they're really passionate about. It seems like it's like something they've spent a lot of time thinking about, and you kind of attribute that sort of argument that they've put forward as something that stems from something about their personality, instead of taking the argument as something that you have to interact with in itself. Like,
Well,
you see what I mean? Like how do you get away from that problem? Because what if
it's
you
not.
just,
It's you only address it when it's blaring that it's like connected to their person. Not everything is connected to their personality or the way they were raised or everything.
Okay.
Like you don't always get insights into how things are connected, but sometimes you do.
Okay, so sometimes it's as you said, like a very big obstacle that is stopping you. But like, what if you're genuinely wrong about it being an obstacle, and you're attributing someone's argument as something that stems from their personality, when really there's an argument there?
But people do that all the time anyway, without psychoanalyzing, without any of that. It's just a skill. Some people are just better than others at it, and some people just suck. And so you're right, it could be a problem, but for some other people, theoretically, it could not.
Okay, so why wouldn't in this sort of theoretical improvement in conversation, why wouldn't people end up spending like so much time sort of psychoanalyzing each other that they don't have enough time to actually talk about the truly important things of life? Like how do we balance that?
If you had a whole society doing that, it would balance itself out.
Okay, so we would all just sort of understand.
Social norms.
But what psychological concepts should we use? Because what if somebody disagrees on the personality system you're using to evaluate them? You know what I mean? Like, I'm more of a Jungian, but he's more of a Freudian. So we
So-
you know what I mean? So
I get that,
Yeah.
but that's just how conversations are right now. Not everyone's going to have the same type of conversations going at it from different perspectives.
yeah,
But if everyone just raises up from the if everyone had the meta conversation, people would just tackle it from different perspectives on what would that look like.
Okay. So this opens up a couple of things, but yeah, my whole question was like, okay, if psychoanalyzation is an important facet in progressing the efficacy of conversation, then what if people have differing views on what psychoanalysis, like what psychoanalytical method is best?
Having meta conversations only works when both people have the time and are invested.
Okay, it only works when people are invested in the conversation. But what if those two people that are invested in the conversation disagree on the psychoanalytical system they're using to have that meta conversation?
Then you have a meta conversation about the meta conversation.
Okay, but why wouldn't that slip into some kind of infinite regression?
Because then you're metacognitive that you are in a regression.
Yeah, but I don't think that in itself.
Then you can have the metacognitive talk about the regression.
But that doesn't seem to solve the regression problem, though.
In practice, it does.
Okay, so in practice it does, because once like maybe the elephant's addressed in the room or something,
Yeah.
or maybe not. Maybe that's a good analogy, but okay. So and part of one kind of flake in what you said
Sure.
that I might want to bring out is some kind of idea about distributed cognition, like something like if we all understood each other perfectly, then the truest ideas would come about in the form of the highest agreement or something like that. Is that not what you said at all?
No, I
Okay.
think it just makes for better conversation, as
Okay.
in like the flow of conversation,
Okay.
where we're not having as many regressions.
Okay.
We're not having as many. This is what I think. Like, you just have assumptions, and you're going off those assumptions, and you're not
Yeah.
really.
So-
It just makes the flow of conversation better,
I guess in the ideal world,
and you would felt being seen. I think that's
Okay.
probably the biggest thing.
so is the goal of all this to try to find truth better, like to believe truer things, and for everyone else around you to believe truer things? Is that
No.
okay? Because is that just an elusive kind of endeavor anyway? Like,
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think you can get everyone to agree.
So you can't get everyone to agree, but that's not necessarily what I asked. I was more asking, like, is the ultimate goal to help more people believe truer things? Not that necessarily everyone will agree, because maybe that's just an impossibility, but the goal is that more people will believe in truer propositions.
More people will be able to see the other side of the view.
So it's not necessarily about believing truer things.
No, it's just having a better conversation where you're able to better
Yeah.
explain, and the other person better able to receive.
To be honest, like now that that's uncovered, it seems very dubious. Like it seems like okay,
multifaceted.
If there's no pursuit of truth, then like is this whole sort of conversational tactic
Well,
kind of
one part of the meta conversation is like if you're both going like
Yeah.
we're talking about the same subject, but
Yeah.
like our goals differ in like what's the goal of the conversation, then that's one problem. But if you're like, hey, like, you have that conversation, it's like, hey, where were we going? What's the point of the conversation?
Yeah.
And then we realign, and then it's like, oh, this is where you want to go, and this is where
Okay.
I want to go, and we can
Yeah.
kind of realign as well.
Okay, but I guess this is the question I have. Like, if pursuit of truth is not even really in the purview of this
No.
of this idea of meta conversation, then why it seems almost like this swirling mess of like cyclical conversation, where we're just sort of understanding each other, but we're not trying to find something larger than ourselves. You know what I mean? But is that just the way you see
You can-
it, or is that a better
can
representation of what
do
you see?
Both at the same time,
Okay.
theoretically.
Yeah.
If you're really skilled, you can. This goes to a skill of like just being able to. This is one skill that people don't have, is having the conversation and remembering the flow of what has been said.
Yeah.
Hey, you said this, then we got to there, and then you said that, and that's how we got to here, into there. That's a special skill many people don't have.
So those connections, what
And-
can you do with those?
And so, you by being able to memorize the flow of conversation, then you're able to have two conversations at once. When one is, exploring the belief of the other person, and the other is finding truth or whatever.
Okay. So,
Like, it's like having, if you're
so there is part of it that's finding truth.
it's different goals. It's like if you
Okay.
remember the flow of conversation, you can actually talk about more than one goal at once.
Okay. So if you have a correct analysis of the terrain that you've come to based on your meta conversation, then you can say, okay, well let's it's like we're playing a game. Like I want to move this piece over here in terms of like some sort of truth, and then I want to move this piece over here in terms of progressing our understanding of the conversation and each other. Something like this. Is that kind of what you mean? Like there's this sort of terrain that we've analyzed based on our meta conversation, and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna move this piece twice to try to figure out, push you on this. Like maybe this thing could be true, or maybe not. Right?
Oh, it's
And
not a chessboard, because conversations quickly break down where there's no, like, you can probably like do two moves ahead, but conversations quickly deviate of like what you. There's no like master chess.
how do
It's
you
more like a mess, but you memorize that whole mess and how you got here, and you're like, oh, well, you know what? I like this point in the conversation was great. It's like maybe the I don't believe in the multiverse, but let's just say thinking of it as like a timeline where it's like, oh, we talked about this, and then we branched off here, and then we talked about his branched off here. Oh, but like at this point I had the meta conversation. Hey, like, you know what? I think we're veering off. Let's go back to here.
Yeah.
And then you go and it breaks off.
But-
and then by having that and just memorize, like having a good self-awareness of that, then you can navigate multiple goals maybe.
At once.
Yeah.
Okay, and one of those goals would be some sort of pursuit of truth, would you say?
Depends. Like, there's probably multiple goals to a conversation.
Okay, but
depending on the person.
can one of those goals, is it possible for it to be a pursuit of truth?
Yeah.
Okay. And would that truth be somewhat arbitrary between the two people, or would it be something that is above them and also above everyone else? That is a sort of common truth.
The problem is I feel everyone's flawed.
Okay.
And so, what's the pursuit of truth when, man, if you have a lot of philosophical talks with tons of people,
Yeah.
people's ideas of the same topic just goes everywhere. At that to the point where it's like when people say something off, it's not off compared to like what everyone else says. It's like, oh, I believe in ghosts. Oh, well, tons of people believe in ghosts. Oh, I believe that how free will, how the universe works is that it's the multiverse. Well, you know what? Someone else has some other crazy belief that's like multiple people have crazy. Everyone has crazy beliefs.
Yeah.
And so how those beliefs interact and everything, it's like, oh, well, maybe they have a negative truth, but how that connects to other truths is like all muddled and everything. And so how do you parse that out when you're having conversations? And
Okay, this is interesting. So if everyone has a crazy belief, do you have a crazy belief?
theoretically, I mean, everyone has their own bias. Can I say that I don't have my own crazy beliefs? Like, I like to say no, but like, I don't know.
So do you think the truth is ultimately something that is, in some sense, like crazy?
No.
Okay.
I'm just saying it's very common that everyone has crazy beliefs.
They have crazy beliefs.
Or, I mean, crazy, but...
Okay, is the hope that everyone would sort of be a rational agent that only believes in the sort of verifiable, and would that make everyone not have crazy beliefs?
Repeat that?
So would the ultimate goal be to eliminate these crazy beliefs by everyone being a sort of rational agent that only believes in what is, let's say, empirically verifiable?
Impossible. Because with the problem is you have dumb, smart people. And so the existence of dumb, smart people disproves that everyone can be logical or whatever. It's like if the higher tier of knowledge thinkers who are incredibly smart are dumb, then it's like,
And how are they dumb? This is really interesting.
So people can be very knowledgeable and they just draw conclusions based off of I don't know what, but you can have very knowledgeable, unwise people.
Okay.
You can have very wise, not knowledgeable people. There's probably tons of variants of what it looks like for a smart person to be stupid.
Then what is wisdom and what is knowledge?
Let me ask you, Mike. Let me ask a question. What do you believe?
Not like that one?
No, I think it's fine, but like I've been simmering on my own question.
Okay.
It'd be fine if I ask a question?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
We can make it more discussion based if you want.
What do you think a society that the norm is that it's okay to psychoanalyze each other?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
How it's like, so basically the stigma that would be behind a sort of psychoanalyzation and
Yeah.
conversation would be gone.
Sure.
Yeah. I think like it's sort of dubious to try to attempt to remove what might be considered a naturally arising stigma because it might have a presupposition that the human being is sort of socially malleable and that based on the like social system or the way that he's been raised up or the culture, he can be kind of changed in any which way to act in any certain way that the I guess social engineer wants. And so I don't know if natural stigmas that seem to arise, like I said, naturally can be sort of engineered away or if they're just inextricable. Like I don't know if
But there's natural stigmas that you would see in different cultures where you don't see that, like you would just say are not natural stigmas in other cultures.
So yes, there definitely are stigmas in cultures
yeah.
that are culturally formed.
Sure.
Yeah. And then there's other stigmas that seem to arise in every culture.
Okay.
So yeah, you have a point.